On October 13th, 1972, a plane carrying a young rugby team just vanished over the Andes Mountains. What happened next, over 72 unimaginable days, is one of the most extreme survival stories you'll ever hear. It's a story that pushes the absolute limits of what it means to be human. You know, this quote from survivor Antonio Vicentin, it really gets to the heart of it all. This wasn't just about luck or chance. It was about a conscious, deliberate choice they had to make, day after day, to live, even when everything around them screamed death. So, here's how we're gonna walk through this incredible story. We'll start with the crash itself and, the science of why it even happened. Then we'll get into the 72-day ordeal on that mountain, the desperate trek that finally led to their rescue, and we'll finish up by looking at the lives of the survivors and why this story still has such a powerful legacy today. All right, so let's go back to the beginning. Picture this, a group of young guys, a rugby team full of life, just setting off on what was supposed to be a fun, totally routine trip. So here are the key facts. The passengers were mostly from Uruguay's Old Christians Rugby Club, and they were headed to Santiago, Chile for a match. 45 people in total boarded that chartered flight, a Fairchild F227, with absolutely no idea that their lives were about to change in the most profound way imaginable. So how does a flight like this go so horribly wrong? Well, it wasn't just one thing, like a simple mechanical failure. It was a deadly cocktail of treacherous weather, some critical human error, and, frankly, the limits of technology back in the 1970s. The original plan was simple, just a direct flight right over the mountains. But really bad weather forced them to stop overnight. The next day, the pilots decided to take this U-shaped route, flying south to cross the Andes at a lower, supposedly safer pass, before turning back north toward Santiago. That detour, that was the fatal decision. And to really get the full picture, you have to talk about the climate. 1972 was what's known as an El Niño year, and that created unusually severe storms and just a ton of snow all across the Andes. So they weren't just flying into the mountains, they were flying right into a weather trap. Okay, so this is the crucial part, this chain of errors. The pilots are flying completely blind in the clouds, totally relying on their instruments. But what they didn't account for was a super strong headwind slowing the plane down way more than they realized. So the pilot, thinking he's already past the mountain peaks, confidently tells air traffic control he's starting his descent. But in reality, he was flying them straight into a mountain. And the crash, as horrific as it was only the beginning. There, in the wreckage, at over 11,000 feet, a new kind of society had to be formed. A society bound together by one single, desperate goal: stay alive. I mean, just look at how fast their priorities had to shift. On day one, it's all about immediate survival, right? Tending to the wounded, trying to find warmth, dealing with intense thirst. But fast forward to day 10, after the last of their chocolate and wine is gone, they're facing a much darker reality: severe starvation, and then a devastating piece of news they hear on their small radio. This quote just perfectly captures their mindset. Hearing that the official search had been called off, that should have been the end of all hope. But for them, it became a call to action. It was the moment they knew, for sure, that their rescue was completely and totally up to them. Hope wasn't lost. It just changed shape. And that realization led them to the most agonizing decision of their lives. Facing certain death from starvation, they made a pact. They agreed that if they died, they gave the others permission to use their bodies for nourishment. Now, this was not a decision they made lightly. It came after days of intense moral and religious debate, but it was the only way they were going to survive. And while they were battling starvation, they were also battling this. Every single night, the temperatures would plummet to 30 degrees below 0 Celsius. The cold was just this relentless, invisible enemy, constantly draining their energy, and maybe even worse, their will to keep going. You know, just when you think things absolutely can't get any worse, they do. An avalanche comes roaring down the mountain in the middle of the night and completely buries the fuselage while they're sleeping. It kills 8 more people, including their captain. They were trapped under the snow for 3 days. It was like a tomb within a tomb. After surviving the avalanche, the remaining survivors knew They just knew that staying put was a death sentence. Their only shot, their only glimmer of hope, was to walk out. It was a final, desperate gamble. So Nando Parrado and Roberto Canessa were chosen to make the trek, with Tintin Vinsington joining them at the start. Their most brilliant invention was a sleeping bag they literally stitched together from insulation they tore out of the plane's tail. And then, after 3 brutal days of climbing, Vinsington makes this incredible sacrifice. He gives his food rations to Nando and Roberto and turns back, just to give them a slightly better chance of making it. 10 days. That's how long Parrado and Canessa walked and climbed through the Andes. Weak from starvation, suffering from frostbite, they crossed some of the most treacherous terrain on Earth with no gear, driven only by the thought of the friends they had left behind waiting in that fuselage. Against all possible odds, they did it. They found help, and 16 men were rescued after 72 days on the mountain. But how do you even begin to go back to a normal life after something like that? It's fascinating because the survivors all took incredibly different paths. Roberto Canessa, who was a med student during the crash, became a world-renowned pediatric cardiologist. Nando Parrado became a successful TV producer and author. Eduardo Strauch, an architect, now leads expeditions back to the crash site. And then you have others, like Roberto Francois, who became a rancher and chose a very quiet, very private life away from it all. And this right here, this is one of the most profound lessons they brought back with them. Tintin Visintin said the ordeal taught him the absolute urgency of telling people you love them. That experience stripped away everything that wasn't essential and forced them all to confront just how fragile life really is. Now here we are over 50 years later, and this story continues to fascinate and inspire millions of people all over the globe. So the question is, why? Why does it endure? Well, for one thing, the memory has been actively kept alive. A museum dedicated to the story opened in Montevideo back in 2012. For the 50th anniversary, Uruguay issued a commemorative stamp and coin. And of course, the recent film Society of the Snow brought this incredible story to a whole new generation, really cementing its place in our culture. But at the end of the day, I think this story lasts because it speaks to something deep inside all of us. The survivors themselves always point to the teamwork, the discipline, the spirit of sacrifice they learned on the rugby pitch. It's just a raw, powerful story about human resilience and the sheer, unbreakable force of the will to live. They defeated the mountain. They did something that seems almost superhuman. But we know survival at that level always comes with a cost. And it leaves you with this one final, haunting question. To win that impossible battle for life, what part of themselves did they have to leave up there on that mountain?